Backed by popular demand.
Hey, everybody.
Yeah, we come in here. I don't know. I think we've taken a 3 week sabbatical.
Yeah, 3 week. I wouldn't call it sabbatical, but a 3 week interval. Just call it. Let's keep it
Yeah,
generic.
yeah, yeah. Well, so that the listeners understand, I'm actively doing at least one show with Brady a week. And every other week we do Nurch. And then now we have this. Uh, and oddly enough, we spend so much time in the Bible and in biblical related texts in the past that we don't have to prepare very much for Nurch. We just kind of shoot from the hip. This, however,
That's true. Yeah.
requires me to at least spend basically about 2 hours with a movie, and we haven't even gotten into the literature yet. Um, but hopefully, thanks for those of you who've subscribed. We understand that this is not quite as colorful as our exit strategy, and we're not spending the entire time just combating biblical ideas and stories.
Hmm.
We're spending this.
Yeah.
This is primarily devoted to just living. I guess someone might say, "Okay, you're a non-believer. You're a non-believer. You cease to believe in the Bible. Uh, therefore, nihilism." And wrong answer. you know, it's like
Exactly.
it's like okay. So, what do you do with your life? Hopefully, I know this is weird. I never thought I would be devoting myself to trying to even help people in any kind of public way through a deconversion. But maybe I just consider this some sort of appendage to um, uh, the Ichabod uh, podcast, where we're saying, all right, Ichabod, if everything Ichabod is doing is true, therefore, boom, this is what um,
Okay.
what do you think, Al? What do you think?
No, I like that. I like that spin on taking Paul's silly syllogisms, I guess, to the next level. Uh, to get it better. We a better something that like is better than what we have been exposed to before. How about
Mm-hmm.
that?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. We spent. You got to get on with your life. I added the segment for aphorisms at the beginning of exit strategy precisely
That's right.
because when I left, I found myself. I didn't want to. Obviously, I still wanted to be a person who read, and that's one of the benefits of Christianity. If you take it seriously, it'll keep you reading. It'll keep you quite literate. Um,
Mm.
So, I didn't want to lose that. And I guess I probably didn't have to worry about losing that because I was always a person who read. But the idea to be able to work through ideas and regularly be encountering things that are challenging you intellectually. I picked up several books of aphorisms. I went to my grandmother's house, grabbed one of her books, and it was just full of aphoristic phrases. And I figured I would include that in exit strategy just to engage people. Like leaving the faith doesn't mean you have to give up on Proverbs. Now, I'm not saying the
Mm.
biblical book of Proverbs, but the idea of maxims or aphorisms. You don't have to give up on that. Anyway, we don't
Well,
want to
one thing,
bother. Mhm.
yeah, no, one thing I wanted to say though is that I think, over the years, J-Wit and I, on the side, right, in our own personal lives, we were always interested in, the world of film, art, literature. Uh, we would often share a lot of, how should I say, a lot of intellectual interests, right? That wasn't, like the faith wasn't the only thing. That it was the most important thing, but it wasn't the only thing driving the whole thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
But uh, I would say that we're still the same person, right? As
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
were before. Uh, but oftentimes I remember back in the day, just enjoying talking about, just like shooting the shit on, whatever cultural thing that we were, interested or found really either enlightening or just absurd and really funny at the same time.
Hmm.
So yeah.
Yeah. And the faith, I think personally, one of the freeing things when I left the faith was I really felt like you could get involved with art, music, or whatever on a deeper level because the faith
Mm,
had a way of flattening things out. And you ultimately
right.
had this very, very much, you had this choice to make. And, some Christians try to make it a little bit more complex, but ultimately there's just like good and evil. And which makes it very hard, I guess you got Francis Schaeffer and people who would try to help you to develop a
Yeah.
more nuanced understanding of art and faith and so forth. But really,
Right.
it was very difficult to just you find yourself enjoying, say, for instance, a film that was pretty profane, maybe even had profane kind of humor, but then
Right.
wondering if you should be enjoying. Is it like a heart issue? Is it sin? You know? So it's really good. It was really
uh
freeing to just leave that behind and just be able to just
yeah.
take things in for what they are, All right. So,
I never bought into the whole kind of neo-Calvinist. Well, for a little time I entertained it, but very quickly, the opinions of Francis Schaeffer and other neo-Calvinists, even as a Christian, did not become convincing anymore. Because
mhm,
I always thought that it was so limiting, right?
mhm,
Like the way that they try to, the kind of like cultural changes that they're advocating for, or not even that, like just even like the kinds of art and cultural like interests that
mhm.
camp generally had. I usually found that I didn't relate to more than half of it, I would say.
Yeah,
you know
yeah. Well, it was
yeah.
interesting to see the neo Calvinists trying to revisit the issue and subject of art after the
Right.
Reformation. Because
Right.
the reformers were more or less iconoclast, so they
Hmm.
they basically I mean, we have them to thank for the Dutch genre painting of the 17th century
That
and stuff because
exactly.
yeah,
Exactly. Yeah.
because they
Yeah.
were so anti weaving faith in with art, but it led to this kind of if you compare the, like a Dutch
Yeah.
aesthetic with
Yeah.
maybe the Baroque era or the High Renaissance or something, you can see the effect that theology had on the arts, and particularly if you looked at the churches of Reformed, um, denominations, you would see they were not nearly. All you have to do is just look at pre-Reformation church culture in terms of aesthetics, and look at post-Reformation among those Reformed sects, and you see that they're fairly artless, and they basically had sort of this bland middle American
Hmm.
evangelical McDonald's aesthetic when it comes to artlessness is a direct
Yeah.
result of the Reformation. And so
Yeah.
when we got part of this, I don't know, resurgence, I guess you would call it, this neo reform movement, we found that there were people who were trying to reclaim some of the baroqueness of in a way, right?
Yeah.
Not necessarily, but they were
Right.
trying to say maybe the reformers went too far. And we're going to reclaim art, but we're going to do it in the 21st century or whatever. And it's just,
Right, right.
and I guess you're saying you didn't think they were doing that good of a job, generally speaking, with that.
Yeah, it was purely based on, I don't know how much of it is theology trying to inform culture, or is it just the fact that culturally speaking, I just didn't find it all too engaged. Like, and I'm not talking about just kitsch, right? I'm talking about like, the ones who are really serious with their craft.
Yeah.
I just I found it to be a lot less compelling as I continued on.
Yeah.
Uh, you know,
Yeah.
so
When your art is informed by what is ultimately a very naive worldview, and that is, I don't care how
mm,
complex you try to make Christianity, it's very naive. It's based on
right,
just really primitive myths, basically. It's pretty hard for your art to be much deeper, you know? Like,
right.
our last Unheavenly Host podcast, we discussed A Serious Man. Part of the strength of the argument of A Serious Man is the unanswered questions. The fact that,
Right.
basically it's, in a godless world, and you have this, you just have all of these huge, you have what you feel like is epistemic certitude alongside the uncertainty of almost everything too. So this kind of
Mm,
paradox of sorts.
yeah,
Um, so yeah, and that's part of the strength and the depth of that film is that it's presenting you with this very nuanced and paradoxical world that we actually inhabit. It's almost a world that is nearly impossible to present to people as a evangelical reformed Presbyterian or something. I mean, I guess you could,
yeah.
I don't want to, I mean, what, the Mormons gave us Napoleon Dynamite. So maybe somebody might kick back. And I thought that was a pretty fun, you know,
Oh no, Falling Dynamite's a great film, but I also doubt, I don't even know how like deeply pious they are as Mormons, because I think Mormonism or Mormons can kind of refer to something more cultural, I think, or
I heard those guys
like
weren't
similar to
Mormon.
how, yeah, no, right, yeah, I think so, but it's like how,
Yeah.
you know what I mean, like how
Maybe they're like Dan
that,
McClellan, because he's a Mormon too,
yeah,
I
Dan
guess,
McClellan,
technically.
right, he's
Yeah.
a Mormon too, so, but it's like how people say they're Catholics, it's like doesn't mean that they're pious, doesn't mean that
Yeah.
they're, they apply their faith into what they do, in their own lives,
I
like
guess
or
it's
whatever
good.
art making.
It's good in as much as it departs from that simplistic world. And maybe that's a better way of saying it, you know?
Maybe that's, yeah,
Um,
yeah.
because I'm sure you have
I'll
some.
tell. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah,
No, I'm listening.
yeah. Oh no, I was gonna say that I haven't done a survey of all this, but I would say in the last, in the 20th century and the 21st century, I always thought the artists who try to engage with religion externally from religion tends
Hmm.
to interest me a lot more. And case in point, and maybe the audience can identify with this. Case in point is art is Dune, right?
Hmm.
If anybody here has watched the Dune movies, I mean, that deals with religion, I think, in a much more compelling way as an art form than if it were somebody who was pious themselves. So
Yeah.
just generally, I know that's not true all across the board, but I'm just saying that I tended to gravitate towards that more. So is
Hmm.
that similar to you in a way, J-Wit? I don't know.
No, I
Yeah,
think you said it
in some
well.
ways.
Yeah. I think the
Yeah.
problem of having to holding every thought captive, to
Mm.
Christ, basically, it just
Yeah.
creates huge problems. Like if you're trying to do
Yeah.
anything that's, crazy. But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I don't know. We've probably this is some people probably are thinking we rambled on quite a while here.
No,
We're,
this
we're
I think this is a great combo. I think this is a good little segue or intro because I think it sets up a lot of things for how we can talk about things in the future. But uh, do the intro on the film we're going to tackle today, J-Wit?
Um, no, I
Or
don't,
should I do it?
because yeah, I
Yeah,
think
okay.
I should. I think I initially envisioned this podcast in general as you kind of, because you're the film buff that I'm actually hoping to
Okay. All
round my
right.
film knowledge
Okay.
off via.
All right.
I think I should be allowing you to take more of a lead, and I feel like the last time I did
Okay.
maybe too much talking. So let's see if you
Okay.
can take the reins from here.
All right. Sounds good. Well, we'll keep this free flowing at the same time as much as we can, but just a disclaimer, I'm not necessarily like a film wouldn't necessarily call myself a film expert, but I would call myself a very devoted student of film. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and it's just something that I've loved for a long time and shared that interest with J-Wit. Um, so in kind of in the spirit of that, last week we talked about, just to recap a little bit, A Serious Man, directed by the Coen brothers, and the whole Schrodinger's cat, uh, you know, uncertainty principle,
Mm-hmm.
ideas that are artistically woven through that movie,
Mm-hmm.
comedically as well. Today we're gonna actually go a little bit backwards in time. We're gonna hit on a
Significantly.
film called, yeah, significant actually.
Significantly
And
backward time.
let me share my screen real quick because give you a little image here. So this is a film. Can everybody see this?
I
Can you
can
see
see
it,
it.
Jay?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So this is a film called Being There. It's a film directed by Hal Ashby. If anyone who's unfamiliar with Hal Ashby, he is most notably known for directing this film, actually, as well as a few others. But I'm on the Criterion site here. But if you just click on Hal Ashby, if anyone's ever watched Harold and Maude, uh, highly, highly recommend this movie. This is I know that people in the older generation have probably more readily watched this before, but um, another great film, absurdist kind of comedy, just written so just, it's amazing.
Hmm.
This is kind of the film that I was first exposed to by Hal Ashby. He's directed multiple others,
Is that him there
he's
in black and
done,
white?
yeah, this is him here. Yeah, he died in the 80s. But he had a pretty illustrious film career. Has a very interesting history if you guys ever want to read up on Hal Ashby.
Mm-hmm.
But his uniqueness as a filmmaker is well known, among film buffs. So not saying anything new or anything surprising to people who are familiar. Um, but going back, so we're gonna do commentary slash analysis. This movie called Being There. You could tell by the art here that it's something, yeah, there's something a little maybe absurd or comical, who knows, like a
Yeah. Well,
combination
it's
of things.
the
It's
art
a
is is almost disturbingly bad, right? I mean, when
right.
you it's huh.
Yeah, no, it's a little, has a little bit of that Wes Anderson vibe that you get. Now, what I mean by that is that, sometimes he'll inject some illustration or art into his films, and it's kind of like intentionally a little bad, but also has an air of poise in its
So
badness,
so it's a little
or
irony.
it's a little irony, yeah. And in fact, if anybody, if you watch a movie like Harold and Maude, uh, you're going to notice that Wes Anderson stole uh, stylistic elements from Hal Ashby. You're going to
Hmm.
notice, and you may even notice a little bit of in Being There as well.
Hmm.
So with that, any comments you want to make before we kind of start about maybe a summary of your takeaway about watching this? And
Yeah,
I think you watched it twice, Jay-Wit, right?
yeah. This was the second time I've seen it, which was a little
Yeah.
disappointing initially. that we were going to do this
Mm,
movie because I was like, I've already seen it and I'm trying to round myself off. But it was actually very much worthwhile after I got going. But
yeah.
I
Yeah.
would just preface, uh, just put maybe this disclaimer out there for those who when you watch older films, you have to almost adjust your pace to a different world. So this film was created in
Absolutely.
1979. Things
Yeah.
don't move even on film the way they do now.
Yeah.
It's a slower paced world. It's a different world. Um, Maybe some of the gloss and the shiny kind of trinkets that you're used to seeing, a certain kind of slick or sleek urbanity that you're used to seeing in movies that you watch now, you have to be prepared to watch something that feels a lot more wonky when it's doing that because it's a much older film. So you always have to turn the knob of your mind and prepare your minds, brothers and sisters. Like
Right.
the preparation for the word. Like
Yeah.
it's like you have to prepare yourself. It's like, hey, I'm going to immerse myself into something that's older, but the experience will be worthwhile. And I said that I was going to be brief. That was too long. Basically, what I'm saying
Oh
is
no.
prepare for maybe a slow, even just like older cars took a little while to start up, and now you get in a car and it starts up immediately. Similarly, with this movie, it takes a little while for it to start up, but you have to bear with it while it's starting up. And but the film will reward you for bearing with it while it's starting up. That's basically, if I had that illustration on hand at the start, I would have just said that. Summed it up.
Yeah. I second everything you said. Everything you said does reflect kind of, yeah. I think my experience and as well as sometimes the challenges with older films. So let's start off. I'm going to share my screen one more time, and now you're going to notice that well, okay, let's not notice anything right now. The thing about this, being there, and once again, we are going to talk through this film. So, if the audience, if you don't feel like you want to hear this, you want to watch it first and then come back to this, that's definitely one way you can do it. However, I think sometimes just hearing the way people talk about films, and even though they take you through parts of it, can kind of like, you know, leave a great impression, and won't necessarily ruin the film experience that way either. Doesn't
Mm-hmm.
matter.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm going to start by saying that I'm just going to give a little background with this film. So, Being There is a film. I went into this film not knowing what to expect at all. I didn't know anything about it, and oftentimes that can be, a good thing, right? And other times, people want a little bit of a summary. But I had no idea going into this film what this was like. And as you start to watch this film from the beginning, you're just like, it has a very slow pace. You're just like, what's, like, doesn't really seem that exciting. But as you start watching it, I'm just like, oh my gosh, like, okay, there's a lot of stuff happening underneath the surface that's very subtle.
Mm-hmm.
And it starts off by this character, this protagonist named Chance Gardner. Um, and the movie starts out with him kind of in his room. He's watching television. Nothing big there. He apparently is a gardener himself, so he's like, you know, doing some gardening. And he's apparently a gardener and lives with a very wealthy guardian, with a maid named Louise. She's a black maid, and he is it feels very unassuming, and obviously this is played by Peter Sellers, who's a well-known comedic actor back in the day. So I'm sure that people had a sense of the comedic tone that he was going with. But for someone like me, I didn't grow up with Peter Sellers necessarily. So, um, but it so happens that as this story kind of builds a little bit from the beginning, his guardian is about to die, and um, as it kind of moves on forward, you start to understand who this person Chance is. So with that, I'm gonna play a little clip here, and I'm not going to say too much, but I'm just going to play it, and then
Hmm.
we'll see. Kind of, I'll stop in, and we can make some commentary. So,
Okay. Yeah, Cadillacs were like a
so
really big deal at the time, right?
yeah. So
Yeah.
like so we're noticing he says like I understand. There's that phrase that Chance kind of respectfully, that's kind of how he's been taught, right? He's like he's been taught politeness, actually, right? There's a certain class that he has, despite the fact that he has this kind of child nature. Um, and what's also interesting here is that in this scene, in the next scene, which we'll skip over, as he's talking to this woman named Eve in the car, um, he offers him a drink, and then he takes the drink, and then at that moment she asks him what your name is, and he tries to say the name Chance, but it gets misread as Chauncey. So from here on, his name is no longer Chance; it's Chauncey Gardner. Which I think, if you actually, I looked this up before, but I think the word Chauncey actually means like someone who brings wealth, or you know, uh, something like that. Like the idea of wealth is built into that name. So all of a sudden, we're seeing the evolution of the metaphors being played here, and he gets picked up, obviously, or not picked up, but they take him in, obviously, because they're not, what are they probably worried about, right? They're worried about him like suing them, right?
Hmm.
So that they're trying to take care of him so that they could kind of protect their own ass. Um, and Eve is the wife of a famous business mogul at the time, or in this film, and they take him to their house, and this is where he, you know, uh,
I think it's
by chance,
hilarious that he says, "My name is Chance the gardener," and
right?
they
The
hear
gardener,
Chance E
Chauncey,
Gardner. Not so
Chauncey
he's like
Gardner,
Chance the gardener. They hear Chance E Gardner, and it's like
right?
it's an underscoring of like they are reading into what they are seeing. I guess it's actually making a profound point about the subjectivity of experience.
Right.
Like when you see a
Yeah.
thing, it's really hard to get an objective take. And this is why they say eyewitness is one of the worst kind of testimony that you can get, because people take everything that they are to witnessing a scene, and sometimes they come back with wildly different descriptions of what occurred. And
Right.
that's because, so she heard him say Chance the gardener, and she heard Chauncey Gardner because he's
Right.
dressed. He's not. Well, I guess he's not.
I didn't think I didn't think of that. You're right. Holy shit. Yeah.
Yeah,
That what they're
yeah,
playing with there is really good.
yeah, yeah. He's not dressed quite like a gardener, and so I guess she's looking at him and she's like, oh, but when she hears the word, it's there's a phenomenon even with the visuals where you can not, like, painters use things like that where
Right.
you fill in the information that's lacking. Your eyes do this all the time when you'll see something and it won't be, but you'll
Right.
see the full thing, even though
Yeah.
certain parts, bits of information are missing in the scene. Your brain completes it. So she sees him. He's
Right.
dressed like this gentleman in the older kind of clothing. He says, "My name is Chance the Gardener," and she hears Chauncey Gardner.
Yeah.
Anyway, I think that's great.
All right. So this next scene I'm going to show is they take him back to their mansion. Uh,
Really
this
lavish.
mogul, yeah, lavish, you know, um, and he meets the family doctor, and the doctor's trying to treat him. So
And
we'll
this
see.
is an
Let's
insane
watch.
setup. The family
Yeah,
doctor has the doctor has an insane setup there at the house.
yeah,
Like it's
yeah.
like
He
a
does.
hospital in the home. It's like,
In the home, right?
yeah.
So everything that we know, audience, everything that we know about Chauncey, who is now Chauncey Gardner, everything we know
Hmm.
about him, and everything we know about the dynamic of how they're communicating. Let's see how he how he deals with the doctor
And he
and how the
never
doctor
corrects
deals with him.
anyone. He never corrects anyone
You
who
know,
calls him Chauncey.
correct. Yes. Yes. So let's yeah. Yeah. Okay. We'll talk about that. Yes. Um, so a couple things, right? It's Chauncey doesn't understand anything that is in the modern world, right? The abstractions. But because he's so kind of soft spoken, but also very terse with his responses, and he just repeats, like you said, how that's perceived by people in society as, how should I say, it's that phenomenon of like, if you just don't speak that much, people can easily assume that, well, I guess here's another way to put it.
Better be
You can
quiet and thought
hide.
wise, right? Better to be quiet
Exactly.
and thought wise than open your mouth and reveal that you're a
It,
fool.
absolutely. You said it even better than me. So, um, and the fact that he repeats to them what he says, he mirrors things back to them, right? He just
Mm-hmm.
repeats what other people have said to him, what people say to him directly. It's almost like it's feeding into this kind of narcissism that can also mask, right, your kind of true thoughts, and the reality is that he's just a kid. He's literally just a kid, but because he's so well kept, right, and he's wearing this kind of very old stylish but kind of affluent older generation. There's a kind of charm that he has to himself, and people just, yeah, that, this is how he's able to by chance move from one scenario to the next without detection.
Yeah.
And from his perspective, he doesn't he just sees people as how kids view people, I guess, right? I mean, he's been taught to be kind.
Well,
He's
he's
been,
extremely naive. He's extremely
he's
naive.
extremely naive. Yes, you're right. That's even better, because what's happening is that he's so naive that uh even the way that he's in this room, in this house, he thinks that this is his new house, his new, like, this is his
Yeah.
new home that he's going to live in.
Yeah.
So all of this stuff is working together, and nobody's noticing. Nobody is like smelling anything wrong with this situation.
I noticed that
Um,
they're uh I noticed that they are like their name Rand, like the couple, and I wonder
yeah.
if that was a
Oh my
reference
gosh.
to Ayn Rand,
Yes.
you know,
Yes,
because
it is. It totally is. I did not catch that at all. Oh
yeah.
my gosh,
So,
you're
so
right.
I found myself because it's not a common last name. It's not like Brown or something. Like their name Rand,
Right, right,
which is I'm
right.
pretty sure a reference to Ayn Rand, because especially because he's this like mogul who's, you know, he's he's arrived at, like, I guess the pinnacle of what you could be as a mogul,
Right,
in a
exactly.
very Randian way, like he kind
Yeah,
of embodies
right,
the Randian
right.
ideal.
It kind of
Yeah.
embodies yeah, absolutely. So, the next scene, I'm going to skip over to when Chauncey meets with another doctor, and this is where he does meet Ben Rand in the room. But for now, this is the interaction that he has with, I think, a nurse, actually. And audience, if you can recall the conversation he had with the kids on the street about Raphael. I don't know if you guys remember that, but that's going to play into this next scene. So let me show real quick. Let me play here.
Do you know Raphael?
No, sir, I don't believe I do.
Because I have a message for him.
Yes.
Oh
A
gosh.
small black man gave me a message for Raphael.
There's a kid, not a small black man.
Yeah,
No,
yeah,
I
yeah,
don't.
exactly.
Now, please. I still.
And he's just, so just because the guy's a black guy, he's like,
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
it's showing you this is how extremely naive he is. Like the first black guy he saw, he's like, all right, I'm going to pass the message on to him. It's like, what?
Oh my
Oh
goodness.
gosh.
Oh, it's so funny. Um, So
And the
we're
guy
gonna skip forward to
and
yeah.
the doctor's almost offended. It seems like he's like, "What?"
Yeah, no, yeah, he's well, actually the doctor doesn't know. The doctor doesn't know it has anything possibly to do with race or
Well,
all
he
he's
just said
hearing
a
is this.
small. Well, he says a small black
Oh,
man.
that's right. You're
Like,
right. Yeah, you're right. He said it.
like,
Yeah,
and
a
the, and
small.
the
Yeah,
black and the black guy looks at him like, "What? Like, what are you like?" It's such a weird. I don't know. But again, he's like he's offensive, but he's naively offensive. You know.
he is. It's so naive. Oh, this is so good. Okay, this is so good. All right, so
But it's
we're
so
gonna skip
dry. The
to
humor, if you're not
I
into a
know
dry kind of humor, you're not gonna appreciate it because all the
it's
jokes
so
are just
dry.
so dry.
This is the thing. I had to watch it a second time to really immerse myself in the humor from the beginning because it towards the middle you start to see the comedy come out a little more explicitly, but oh my goodness, when you watch this again, there's all the little things, little interactions that you pick up. It's so good. Peter Sellers is just totally brilliant in this role. All right, so we're gonna skip to the dinner scene when he has a conversation with this mogul and the doctor. So
The two of them are in a
yeah, you're right. They're two.
I was cracking up when I saw the scene. I said,
I
"This is
didn't know.
ridiculous."
I
The
didn't notice how
symmetry
funny
is
that was.
hilarious.
It is,
You know,
yeah.
like the art of the cropping here with the pool
Yes.
tables on both sides and two wheelchairs and
Yes, you're totally right. I didn't even notice that symmetry. Oh my gosh, that's great.
very Renaissance like, you know.
So I'm gonna play this. Okay, you know what? I'm gonna skip a little bit because I think we are running a little short on time. So
Okay, yeah.
what happens? Yeah, so I'm gonna tell you what happens here, and where Chance takes C is that Ben Rand is also a very close confidant, right? I guess, or consult. I don't know. He allies with the president of the United States.
Yeah, he's like in his inner circle.
Yeah.
Like it's insane.
Yeah, it's the inner circle. Yeah, and Ben is so enamored by Chauncey that he thinking that Chauncey is some sort of like he's been hurt by the world that doesn't respect the business minded, right? As any mogul person might complain about, and thinks that Chauncey has something really insightful to say. So he invites him to see the president of the United States.
Yeah.
And let's skip to that.
I couldn't help but think that this was somewhat a little bit of. I was like, nowadays they would call this white privilege. Like the guy randomly gets, the guy bumps into him. Next thing you know, the guy's in the presence of the president of the United States, and he's a total. He's there's nothing going on upstairs in his head at all. It's just based on the external. And it's like, I'm sure someone would say this was white privilege for sure if this actually happened,
Well, Luis has a word on that, right? The old maid.
By the time they got around to that, because I already had it jotted down to know about that. I was like, well, she said it before, the phrase existed, I was like, wow.
Right.
Like,
you're
because
right.
they didn't have the language they have now to describe it, what's going on, but
correct.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, he's totally privileged. Yeah.
All right, let me share this. So this is Chauncey who meets the president.
I didn't say this. During this time period, just the 80s, or it seems I've seen movies from 70s, 80s, where you have this kind of humor where it's the unassuming person. I don't know. Have you ever seen the movie Holy Moses?
I have not. No.
Is WH OLLY instead of holy like that. Holy Moses.
Okay. Got it.
It's sort of like I don't know. I guess it's sort of Monty Python kind of esque.
Hmm.
It's a very like the whole movie is like I forget whether he's some relative of Moses, and he's walking around thinking that he's doing the stuff that he just like he comes right after like God's talking to Moses or whatever, and he's like on the other side of like a stone, and he
Yeah.
thinks God's talking to him.
Uh,
You know what I mean? Like so, like the humor is all based in like he just happens to get at each scene right after it actually happened, but he thinks he's this like prophet. It's just,
he thinks
it's
he's a
just,
prophet.
yeah, just this kind of like idiot that's going through life thinking. I think this is a similar
Oh,
kind of humor. I think it was just in the air to
yeah.
make these kind of humorous movies at the time, where you
I think you're probably right. Yes, you're probably right.
like the kind of
Yeah,
moronic or just kind of empty-headed,
right,
sort of
right.
neurodivergent guy who's walking through life, and he's these really hilarious moments are happening. Actually,
Right.
that's the premise of a lot of Mr. Bean's humor, if you think about it.
Yes, it
He's
is.
like,
Yes,
it's the
absolutely.
same
Yep.
type of thing, It's like, he's just kind of really naive, and then you just get these hilarious moments out of it. It's weird because we don't really see that anymore in film or
We don't.
anything.
Yeah, that's not.
So
I don't know why that went out. Like what
it's hilarious.
it is hilarious. Yeah, but you're right. We don't see that anymore. It's almost like everybody has to like everybody's too much in the like how should I say? It's like everybody's motives are too explicit. Everybody's you know what I mean? It's like there's not enough of such of the veil, right, that we experience on a day to day.
Mhm.
And the fact that most of us we hardly can tell what the other person is actually feeling or going through.
Yeah.
But when
It
you
seems like it's
most of the media use yeah,
go
go ahead.
ahead. No, go ahead. Most of the media.
Yeah. So most of the media, it kind of these characters reflect otherwise.
Hmm.
Generally speaking. So yeah. Um,
I think guys like Sasha Baron Cohen, they've turned it around where
mhm.
you
Oh
have
yeah.
like this the super savvy protagonist is actually the jokes
Right.
on the
Yes.
audience. Whereas this humor
Right.
is like it's the reverse. It's like you have the
It's the
aloof
reverse.
protagonist, this
Yeah.
person who's walking
Yeah.
through life totally aloof and absolutely really like slapstick, like like hilarious moments are happening, and the person
Right.
he's playing his role and he's totally aloof. He has no idea that he's creating all of this really comedic material just because it's all based in him being aloof, which makes it even more
Right.
funny because the guy
It
asks him,
makes
"Can I call you Chauncey?" And he's like, "All right, sure."
yeah.
Like it's
Okay,
like
sure.
no, the guy is asking him because he's trying to address him by his first name and not his last name. He's reading it
Right.
as, "Oh, you've given me a different nickname." You see what I mean?
You can
So
use
it's the joke.
right.
They're both thinking different things. It's
Oh,
so funny,
it's
man.
such a brilliant.
Yeah, it is. It's
It's so
hilarious.
funny and brilliant at the same time.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
So okay, let's see Chauncey meet the president. So
Yeah.
everything that we've said so far, this is like it's like a hype moment here.
Hmm.
So
Yeah. This is
I just love I
ridiculous.
just love I just love that the conversation he has with the president is that the really long pauses,
Hmm.
right? I mean he's not thinking of he's not making a long calculation in his head. He's just thinking about how to talk about his garden. But the other side, they receive that, they interpret that as him really kind of getting into his insights, as about the
Like that he's being poetic or
yeah,
something. Yeah.
he's being poetic or he's being really profound. He's choosing his words wisely. He's being, but for Chauncey, it's just him, doing what he does in a very naive state.
You
Um,
know,
which
I had to go ahead. Which? Go ahead. I'm
yeah,
listening.
no, that's it. That's it. Go ahead, J-Wit. Yeah.
I had a thought about while I was watching this film, I was reminded that a really good film can bring you an experience that you might never have in real life and make you feel like you're part of it. Like, so the luxury that this billionaire basically is living in, they take you right into the house with them. And just for, the 2 hours or whatever that you're watching this film, for a little bit, you feel like you're living this plush life because you're right there in the audience and in this huge, all the leather bound books and with all of the service at the dinner table, you feel like you're sitting at the table there. And I was like, a really good film really brings you into those kinds of worlds. And you can experience it even if you don't experience that kind of luxury in real life. And I that's just incidental. It's something that I noticed while I was watching this. I was like, wow, they've really pulled me into this luxurious world and made it feel real for me. Like
Right.
like for a little while, I feel like I'm there. Anyway, that's just
I
incidental.
mean, no, it's not incidental. I think it's a good way to color the whole thing because, even when the president shows up to the mansion, you see his entire motorcade pull
Yeah,
up to the house, and
CIA and
it's like
everything.
when you see that, yeah, and when you see that, you're like, holy shit, this is probably what the wealthy class, your Warren Buffetts, all that, when the president comes to see you, that's what they're pulling up in. It really gave you that sense of like what this world is like. And
Hmm.
yeah, that's definitely integral to the story.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
it makes it really feel
So
believable. It's like
yeah,
but this guy just by
yeah,
chance goes from one wealthy situation to
yeah,
another one
to another
seamlessly,
one. Yeah.
seamlessly, just taken care of. And it's all a result of a certain kind of privilege he has as a person, how he presents in the society. People look at
Right,
him
right,
and he's more or less a moron, but because people look at him and think he's something other than that, he's able to
right.
experience this very luxurious life.
So for the next scene, let's see. So because of the president making a speech to the public and talking about Chauncey Gardner, who's a close I guess
Chance the
associate or
gardener.
kin to, yeah, to Ben Rand. Now he's gotten the nation's attention. So
Yeah.
we're gonna see him talk to almost on the phone here.
He's a national figure.
He's become a national figure overnight.
Yeah.
Remarkable.
Yeah.
Remarkable.
It's so ridiculous. He's saying the
Remarkable.
same he's saying the same thing over and over again, and people are just, giving him applause and everything. It's crazy.
All right, so here's the thing. We can do some last comments. I can J-Wit. I almost feel like I don't want to play the ending. What do you
Yeah,
think?
no, we'll leave it open for the audience to
Yeah, we'll
actually
leave
go
it
back.
open. Yeah.
This movie probably doesn't get checked out enough. So
No. Yeah.
come check
So
it.
i- go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I'm letting you take the lead. Go ahead.
Yeah. So yeah, no, I think we'll leave the ending to the audience. I think this is one of those endings where um yeah, I think it's better left unshown up to this point. I know we've shared a lot, but here's some takeaways I think for me though. I there there are a lot of them, but one of the big ones that stuck out in my mind is this film is always asking the question, who is the actual fool? And without ever giving an answer. Um,
Hmm.
and for me, it really is, in some ways can be referenced, when you have Paul describing, right, in First Corinthians, that God has made, what did it say? You have to refresh my memory too. So God chose the foolish things of the world to shame the
To shame the
wise,
wise. Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Yeah, to shame the wise. And you know that in itself is purely subjective. That in itself is purely it's just a rhetorical way to, I guess, contrast what, like whatever belief system or whatever team you're on, that and what you'll do is you'll paint the world in one way, and in order to show that you're unique or different, you'll paint that, well we're not, we turn the world upside down, right? And that's essentially where the world, where that phrase comes from. But I just love the fact that this film asks that question and never gives you an answer.
Mhm.
And in fact, it you know and I don't think it's being postmodern in that sense either. Like I really don't. Like I just think that it so effectively and comedically just shows you that it all depends on who's watching. It all depends on who you are, whether who answers that question or not.
Well, I think he's
That's
always.
been, yeah. Mhm.
I think it's also showing you how much chance plays a role in people's fate in life in general.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
I mean, his name is Chance,
Yeah.
but if you look at his life, it's just a series of coincidental
Right.
happenings. Um, it's like chance coupled with people's perception of who you are, which has a lot to do with the chance, I guess. Apparently, like how much of it is just how you present in the
Right.
world and people's perception of
Right.
you, and how much of it is just coincidence. You know?
Wait, isn't it funny that, like, because his name was Chance, and then the moment he meets them, he gets pulled into the Mogul family. Then it becomes Chauncey,
Yeah, which
Chauncey
sounds
Gardner,
more fancy.
and fancy.
You know,
It sounds fancier, yeah, in a funny way, and then
yeah.
it also kind of changes the direction of the film. Uh, you know, but this whole, like, yeah, this whole fact of like I always got that he was leaving the garden. I always got that, but yeah, I didn't think too much about, like, but then he's actually trying to go back to the garden at the same time. So there's
Yeah,
that, symmetry happening,
yeah.
um with the entire idea. Um but yeah. um
He seems fairly happy. That's the other thing that's crazy about it.
yeah.
Like
Yeah.
he's got this really simple outlook on life, but he's unbothered. He's not worried. He's just kind of going. He's just totally aloof, and he's just
Uh,
it's interesting.
it's so funny. I don't know if you caught the credits, because in the credits they showed an outtake, a deleted scene actually. But they're a bunch of outtakes, and it's Chance when he's laying on the, he's in the hospital room in the mansion,
Mhm.
and he's just uh recalling and verbalizing all the things that the black little kids were saying to him. And in the outtakes, like he's saying it in the Chance character, but Peter Sellers couldn't hold his laughter. Like he broke and broke and broke,
Wow.
like just
Uh,
just
I didn't see that.
repeatedly.
I cut it
Yeah.
off by that point. Wow, that's hilarious.
Yeah, it's really good.
I
Um,
um I did notice. I think it was toward the beginning. They noted Johnny Mandel, who's a great composer. He was part of
mm,
the soundtrack. I know Billy Preston, famous organist singer. He was part of it. Trying to think of some others.
well, nice.
But
Yeah,
yeah, the soundtrack's pretty interesting. It's
yeah,
interesting. It's sparse, but when it's used well. And this is in a time when Superman, John Williams hadn't even
right.
reached his full height. So you got
That's
guys
right.
doing like really lush, big soundtracks. What's that movie with Christopher Reeves where I forget, it's a period film. Now it's killing me. Let me Google it really fast. But it has a
Yeah,
huge, lush soundtrack for the whole thing, and it's just
yeah,
like, uh, basically what I'm saying is during that period, a lot of films had really lush soundtracks, and this one's sort of minimalist in a lot of ways. You know,
yeah,
I feel like
yeah.
the
What
music comes in and goes out. What were you saying?
what I love what I love about Hal Ashby's directing is that he doesn't. You almost feel like he's never there's no wasted shot. There's no wasted, like everything is as simple of an expression as possible. You definitely get that with, you know, a film like Harold and Maude. But
Mhm.
it like for this film, like, oh my goodness, yes. Though the pace is a lot slower than, you know, films that we watch today, but it's remarkable how efficient he is, even though it can feel drawn out. But he's doing it to express it in a way where he's really walking that fine line between uh what's almost what's almost so trivial but then absurd at the same time. Like it's like you kind of get what I mean by that. He's not
Yeah,
like
yeah,
there's nothing showy at
yeah, yeah,
all.
yeah. Yeah, this is
Yeah.
a. It's great. It's great to see a film with no crazy special effects.
Yeah.
It's just like, you know, it's just it's depending on the sheer writing, the brilliance of the writing.
Right.
And the movie
Right.
I had in mind from Christopher Reeves was Somewhere in Time. It's a 1980 movie. Um,
Okay.
just a year after
Got
this
it.
one came out. It's like, but yeah,
Yeah,
it
yeah,
has
yeah, yeah.
this lush like soundtrack and everything. But yeah, yep. I think this director, you know, you can definitely see if you understand the influence he probably had on later directors, you can see some of his influence on, you know, like kind of
Yeah.
understated comedic thing, you know. The great shots. I mean, you know, it's beautifully shot, you know, like cropping, you know, or I should say the framing of scenes.
The framing. Yeah.
Almost every one is like pretty artfully done, and you know, even that dinner scene where it's an aerial shot of it, and you can see the tables laid out, and
Yeah.
I don't know, it's just really beautiful to look at. You know,
Yeah, it's
it's a really
beautiful.
beautiful
Yeah.
film. Well, I
Alrighty.
guess that's about it. Yeah.
Well, I guess that's about it. But audience, you know, if you choose to watch this or you watched it, tell us what you think about the ending. Uh, you know, we'll definitely want to hear your thoughts because to me that was a surprise and I think one of the best endings to a film that I've seen. Um, yeah. Should we cue the music, J-Wit? Should
Uh,
we talk about next steps next time? What's in store for us for the next episode? What do you think? Or should
uh,
we
we'll surprise them. This for
okay,
now.
yeah, we'll spread. Yeah, yeah.
We'll surprise them.
Well, thank you all for joining us on today's edition of Unheavenly Hosts.
Yeah. Hopefully we'll get a logo together for it too, right?
We'll get that together. And hope you guys enjoyed this as much as we enjoyed it. Till next time. Peace.
All right. Signing off.
Yeah.